So in this video, I want to talk to you about whether you should buy a house as an assistant professor. This is actually something that a lot of people go through, and I think it is a very real concern for a lot of us. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massack. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I wanted to pay the favor for to help you out. So why is this such a sort of contentious issue in terms of, buying a house? Why is that a contentious issue? It's because that often we only stay in one spot for a short amount of time. If we don't get tenure, or if it doesn't look like we're going to get tenure, then it may mean that we have to move within a few years. So what I would suggest, and this is what happened to me, so I'm going to tell you that my wife and I bought a house when we started my PhD, and it worked out okay. It wasn't, I wasn't sort of running to the bank and making a ton of money, but we did okay. We saved a little bit of money in that house. And then we bought another house when we moved, when I started my assistant professor position. The reason why we did that was because we looked at the rental market, and the rental market was a lot more expensive than it was to actually get a mortgage. Now I know that there's risk to owning a home, but you have to sort of think about what it means in the market that you're in, right? So if you're in a stable market, it looks pretty stable, and you're planning to stay more than about 4 years. I did the financial calculation. Now, I'm not a financial guru or whatever, but I did a financial calculation using net present value years ago, and it worked out. In fact, I've got an Excel spreadsheet someplace. If anybody ever asks for it, you can take a look at it. But it works out that in about 4 years, you typically break even with a home. So anything longer than that, then it makes sense to actually buy a home versus renting. Because there's costs associated with buying a home. But you can expect reasonably that the value of your home is going to go up at the inflation rate. Typically, it's going to be around the inflation rate. So, 2 to 4% or somewhere around there. That's a reasonable expectation for your home. If it's growing more than that, if it's growing like 8% in terms of home values or whatnot, that is really unusual. That means that there's something going on in the city or place that you're at, and you probably should, I don't think the housing market is sort of as volatile as some markets, but it's also kind of a sign that there's something weird going on. And, the trick is, so there's been several cities like that. So I'm Canadian, looking at Toronto and Vancouver and stuff. And I was like, what is going on here? This is really, really strange, because the housing market there has been going up 8 to 10% for years now. So they didn't really have the financial crisis like they had in the United States. And so the housing market has constantly been increasing over time. And I can't figure out what was going on until relatively recently. And I'm not going to sort of excuse it or whatnot. But I think until relatively recently, I didn't sort of figure it out that there is probably some long-term shifts in immigration that are going on, and there's policies that have been put in place that have sort of restricted the supply of homes within those different locations. So you have to think about that as well. Now, it's not going to say that might sort of slow down, but there's maybe something more fundamental, and you just don't really know. That's the thing. You really never know. But if you're in a relatively stable marketplace, so stable being that things are on the up and up, everybody is sort of, it looks good, right? There's no, major catastrophes or anything like that's in the near term that you're sort of dealing with, then it's reasonable to buy a home if you're planning to stay there for more than 4 or 5 years or so. So, here's things that I would consider that really jumped out at us in terms of, my family buying a home. that was just, we didn't sort of expect it. And so it was really kind of, especially in those first few years especially when I was doing my PhD, where we didn't have a lot of money. These are things that you kind of expect, and you might want to sort of not buy a home simply because of some of these things, and they're very real, right? So the first one is that handymans are not always handy. So I'm not saying like handy, people say handymans, but I was thinking like handy woman. It just doesn't sound the same way. But anyways, I'm not really gender specific here. But odd jobs are often easier to do simply yourself. And it's super hard to find handymans around simply because that, there really are not a lot of people are actually really good with their hands, even if they call themselves a handyman. And so it might not warrant your time to find somebody like that. And it might be just easier for you to fix it yourself than to find somebody else to do it. And anything that, might take more than a couple of hours, so anything less than about 6 hours to do, it's probably just easier to do it yourself on the weekend. And, so like change a light fixture or something like that. Something really basic. You can learn, you could Google that, and you could do it. I mean, I'm not an electrician, so by the way, if your house burns down, if you listen to this recommendation, then I'm not an electrician. But, some really basic things that you can do around the house. It's usually just easier to do yourself. So if you're not into that, then that might be actually a real consideration for you. A second thing is that you really need to find references to find anybody to sort of help out with your home and stuff is going to be the most important thing. Don't typically relying on like an ad or something like that. It's not going to be all that good. But if you can find references of people that you trust, now it's hard to find people to trust, but if you find somebody that you can trust, their judgment, then, ask them who they have dealt with in the past and who's good people. Now, I know it's really hard when you're moving someplace, but that's going to help you out a lot. And it's really about the inside deals to actually do really well. To find people that are good, they're going to show up, actually do a good job, they're going to care. The sort of basic stuff that you can imagine about. So you also have to think about your home in terms of financial considerations. Is your home is not necessarily, I wouldn't consider it like a good investment. You could do much better if you just invest in S&P 500 index funds, and that are much less risky, that provide much better returns. It's hard. It's basically impossible to beat that. But what you consider is that your home is almost like a piggy bank, in that you're just kind of storing money at a pretty good, it's pretty solid investment, and you're just storing money in there, and it's not going to make you a ton of money. So don't expect it to do that. But then the other thing to realize is that this is a long-term thing. And so, if you get a 20-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage, recommend a 15-year mortgage if you could do it. I highly recommend it. But if you can get those things and realize that things take time over this time to sort of build that investment, it sort of takes off a lot of pressure. You don't have to do everything at once, right? Like that's a really big thing that's helped us out, is that we do things slowly over the course of several years. If we have something that we want to do, we get it done, and it's a lot less expensive, and we kind of just save up and we spend it whenever we've sort of planned for something, and we do it sort of incrementally. So for example, you probably could see shutters on the window here, right? We put those in. They're pretty expensive, and then we didn't have them when we were here, and we just did it incrementally, like a couple windows at a time and a couple windows at a time. I think we had them come out 3 times or something like that to put those things in, and it worked out okay for us, and it sort of makes sure that we can do things incrementally. The other thing that here's the sort of counterpoint to this, and that if there's something that you really, really want to do and you're kind of putting it off, It makes sense, and you're thinking that you have to do this anyways, right? So that's the important thing. You have to do this anyways to sell a home. It's better just to do it up front because then you get to enjoy what you wanted to do. And now, but the hard thing is most people kind of get it mixed up in terms of a want and a need in terms of selling your home. Most things you don't need to do in your home. But if there's something that you think is like a real eyesore or really needs to get done, just get it done, and then you get to enjoy it at the same time for over the course of the years that you're there. For example, we're always kind of like, maybe we should wait to paint this or whatever, but the best thing is just to paint it, and then you get to enjoy that thing that you have or the thing that you really wanted for an extended period of time. So there's that enjoyment aspect of it that I think is really important. And then, the fifth thing that I think this is going to be the best financial advice you'll ever get because it's really helped us out. We've done very well with this, is get those double payments going as quick as you can. So if you can pay off your home quicker, it does help. And it's not, so you might think of, you could get better returns by investing in the stock market. It's true, you probably can, but there's also the risk element that you're forgetting about there. And there's a tremendous amount of stress that's associated with having mortgages and things like that, like having to need to do something. Once you kind of move beyond that, then it's so a lot less stressful, and it takes a lot off of you. It sort of, in some ways, it sort of demotivates you at the same time, but at the same time, it's like it takes a lot of stress off, and so you can not worry about things. So getting those double payments going sooner rather than later, it's going to really help on the finances that you have in the long run. So with that, give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.